Hello, Tom. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
A little story about tickets, I understand.
Here's an old Green Bay Packer ticket story. When I was a young child in my early teens or so, my dad decided, we were Packer fans, of course, at the county stadium, and my dad decided to buy, he started making a few bucks and decided he wanted to buy some season tickets. So he contacted somebody down there and told me he was interested. He had a tavern on the east side of Milwaukee, and he was interested in buying a dozen tickets, and he would use them as a giveaway at the tavern. They were so excited to sell a dozen tickets that somebody met us at the stadium and walked us around so we could pick seats and sit in them and see how we liked the view. And we picked a dozen seats on about the 45-yard line and up enough that if it snowed or rained, we didn't get wet. And they were so excited that my dad took that many tickets that they gave my dad tickets to go to Frenchie's, which was a very famous restaurant east side of Milwaukee, for dinner for he and the whole family. And
nice.
We became ardent Packer fans through the Tobin Road years and the hope we could win a few game years and the cold and.
So they recruited you, kind of.
Yeah, they recruited.
And they wined and dined you a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it was a family outing every time they played. All my cousins and
wow.
uncles would go, and we'd bundle up with the storm coats, the big old storm coats, and the rubber galoshes and hats and gloves. And
how old were you then, Tom?
Probably about 10, 12 years old.
Okay, so
and an older brother, 5 years older, and then two older male cousins, 5 years, each one 5 years older, and then a couple of uncles and my dad, and we'd all go off in two cars and go off to the county stadium.
Oh, how much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Wow. Who was your first favorite Packer when you were real young?
My favorite Packer was Ray Nitschke. I remember him looking up at the stands sometimes and smiling, and he didn't have any front teeth, and he'd give you a big smile, and I was always a Nitschke fan. And I kind of always liked the defensive backs, I think, because they were so quick. Willie Wood and some of those guys. Herb Adderley I liked.
Yeah.
But Nitschke was my all-time favorite.
Any one game at the stadium, at County Stadium?
Probably the game they played, I think it was Los Angeles. And there was a lot of, it was a West Coast team. There was a lot of talk about how they were going to come up and outdazzle the Packers. And they knew that the Packers did that end around that sweep, the Packers sweep, and they had plans to stop it, and the Packers beat the stuffing out of them, and that was probably the best game I remember.
Well, the Rams had beaten us one year in '67 toward the end, and then we came back and beat them at County Stadium.
That must have been the game.
That's probably
and there was
the game.
A lot of lip service from the Rams.
Yeah, they kind of were the upstarts.
Yes.
And we were the veteran club.
Yes, and we just ground them out. They kept running that play and just pounding them and pounding them. And I remember they swept to the inside, so they were actually kind of on the infield of the baseball park. They didn't cover the grass, and these guys were just full of mud. I think they were wet, and Taylor just pounded them and pounded them and pounded them. Yeah. That was a really good game.
Yeah, that's a classic game. That really was. They were really challenging the Packers' superiority.
Yes. And some of the games that we looked bad in, when it was cold out, it even seemed colder. As the points got higher from the opponents, it got colder out there.
The temperature goes down as the opponent went up.
There was some cold days. I never did see a game up at Green Bay until many, many years later when I was an adult.
Yeah.
But I always think of the county stadium as the place for the Packers.
Yeah, that was kind of fun going there. The seats, weren't the best, far away from the field.
Yeah, you were a little bit far away on the.
But the tickets, you could get them.
Yeah, you could get plenty. I don't think if they were half full, it was a good day till Lombardi came along, and then of course it was filled.
Yeah.
And I think when they moved to Green Bay, we got a few tickets up there for a few games. At that point, my parents had moved out of town, and one of my cousins took all the tickets, and I think his family probably still has them.
And they go to probably 2 or 3 games a year still up there.
Yeah. The next generation.
Yeah, that relationship with Milwaukee was really important.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah.